I was standing in line at the pharmacy, exhausted from a double shift, when my phone buzzed. The text from my mother, Angela, read, "Don't come to the wedding. You and those kids will just make everything awkward." Below it, laughing emojis from my sisters Jenna and Megan. My hands started shaking so badly that I dropped the $140 bottle of my daughter's medication, watching it shatter across the pharmacy floor. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I decided I was done being their cash machine. But before I tell you what I did next, if you've ever felt used by people who were supposed to love you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear how this story ends, because trust me, you won't see this coming. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. The first time I realized my family saw me differently than they saw each other, I was 11 years old. It was my birthday, and Mom had promised me a small party at the local pizza place. Nothing fancy, just me and a few friends. But that morning, Jenna came downstairs crying because she hadn't made the cheerleading squad. Mom looked at me and said, "Addie, sweetie, your sister is really upset. Maybe we should postpone your party and do something to cheer Jenna up instead." I agreed, because that's what good big sisters did. We never rescheduled my party. 3 weeks later, Jenna made the squad on her second try, and we had a huge celebration dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. No one mentioned my birthday. That became the pattern. My needs were negotiable. Theirs were absolute. When I was 13 and needed glasses because I couldn't see the blackboard at school, Mom said we couldn't afford it. But somehow, 2 months later, there was money for Megan to go on a school trip to Washington, D.C. I squinted through another year until a teacher noticed and called home, threatening to report medical neglect. Only then did I get my glasses, the cheapest frames available, and Mom made sure I knew what an inconvenience it was. I was 16 years old when I first signed my name as a co-signer on student loans for my sisters. 16. Mom sat me down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night, a stack of paperwork spread out in front of us. "Addie, honey, you know how important education is. Your sisters need help getting into good schools, and we need someone with good credit to co-sign. You've been working part-time for a year now, and you've never missed a payment on anything. The bank trusts you." I remember feeling proud in that moment. The bank trusted me. Mom trusted me. I was being helpful, responsible. "But Mom, what if they can't pay it back?" I asked, because even at 16, some part of me knew this was a huge commitment. "Oh, baby, don't be silly. This is just a formality. I'll take over the payments as soon as they graduate. You won't pay a penny, I promise." She pushed the papers toward me with a pen. "Besides, this is what sisters do for each other. Family helps family." I signed. Jenna was going to State University to study marketing. Megan was heading to a private liberal arts college to study art history. Both of them had dreams, and I was helping make those dreams possible. That felt good. That felt like love. 4 years later, Jenna graduated and immediately started working at a boutique marketing firm. Her salary was decent, certainly enough to start making loan payments. But when I brought it up, Mom's response was sharp. "Adeline, your sister is just starting out. She needs to build her savings, establish herself. Don't be so selfish about money. We'll start paying you back when she's more stable." 2 years after that, Megan graduated with a degree she never used. She bounced between retail jobs and long periods of unemployment, always with an excuse. The economy was bad. The job market was oversaturated. She was too creative for corporate life. Meanwhile, I was making payments on both their loans every single month. $300 for Jenna, $400 for Megan. $700 total that could have gone toward my own life, my own future, my own dreams. But I didn't have dreams anymore. I had responsibilities. Growing up, I learned early that my role in the family was to fix things. When I was 15, our electricity got shut off because Mom had spent the utility money on a weekend trip to Atlantic City with her friends. I got a job at a fast food restaurant after school, lying about my age, and started slipping cash into the bill drawer. When Mom needed her hair done for a date with a new boyfriend, I handed over my babysitting money without her even asking. When my sisters needed new phones because theirs were 2 generations outdated and they were being made fun of at school, I worked double shifts and paid for the upgrades. It was always me, and it was never enough. There was always another crisis, another need, another emergency that only I could solve. And if I ever hesitated, if I ever suggested that maybe someone else could help, I was met with hurt looks and guilt trips. I thought you loved us. Family takes care of each other. Why are you being so selfish? So I stopped hesitating. I stopped asking questions. I just gave and gave and gave until I didn't recognize the person I had become. A walking ATM with no password required. I met my ex-husband Jason when I was 19. I was working full-time at a medical office, taking night classes at community college and still paying most of Mom's bills. Jason seemed like an escape, a chance at building something that was mine. He was charming, attentive, and he told me I was too good for my family, that I deserved better. I believed him. I thought he saw my worth when no one else did. We got married 6 months after we met. I was 20, pregnant and hopeful. This was going to be my fresh start. Jason and I were going to build a life together away from the constant demands and expectations. We moved into a small apartment across town, and for about 3 months, everything felt perfect. He worked construction, I kept my medical office job, and we started planning for our baby. Then the cracks started showing. Jason would come home late, smelling like beer, his paycheck mysteriously short. When I asked about it, he'd get defensive. I work hard all day. I deserve to blow off some steam with the guys. His idea of blowing off steam apparently cost several $100s a week. When our daughter Emma was born, I was the only one who adjusted my life. I took unpaid leave from work because we couldn't afford daycare, which meant we were living entirely on Jason's inconsistent paychecks and whatever savings I had left. By the time Emma was 6 months old, I was back at work, taking her to a neighbor's apartment during the day and paying for childcare in cash. Jason's drinking had gotten worse. His paychecks got smaller. And then my family started calling again. The phone would ring at 8 in the morning, and it would be Mom asking if I could help with her car payment. She'd lost her job. Just temporary, just until she got back on her feet. $200. I sent it because what else could I do? She was my mother. Emma needed her grandmother. Family helps family. A week later, Jenna called. She needed money for her security deposit on a new apartment. Her roommate had bailed and she couldn't cover it alone. $500. I sent it. She promised to pay me back within the month. She never did. When Emma was a year old, I got pregnant again. I hadn't planned it. Jason and I were barely holding things together as it was. But my son Noah came into the world anyway, a surprise but a beautiful one. I loved both my kids fiercely, desperately. They were the only purely good things in my life. But Jason saw Noah's arrival as one more burden, one more expense, one more thing taking my attention away from him. The fights got worse. He'd come home drunk, yelling about money, about how I was never happy, about how I'd gotten fat after the babies, about how his life had turned out nothing like he planned. I'd sit in the nursery nursing Noah while Emma slept in her toddler bed, and I'd wonder how I had ended up here. How had I gone from being the capable, responsible one to being trapped in a cycle of giving and getting nothing in return? By the time I was 23, I had 2 beautiful kids and divorce papers. Jason had started staying out all night, sometimes not coming home for days. When he did come home, he'd empty whatever cash I had in my wallet and disappear again. The final straw came when I found out he'd taken out a credit card in my name and maxed it out. $7,000 in charges, mostly at bars and casinos. I filed for divorce, and he didn't even show up to contest it. He just vanished, leaving me with 2 kids, a mountain of debt, and no child support. I had no choice but to move back in with Mom. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few months until I could save up enough for a deposit on my own place. Just until I got back on my feet. Mom made a big show of welcoming me home, telling Emma and Noah how excited she was to have her grandbabies in the house. For the first week, it almost felt supportive. Then the bills started appearing on my bed. The electric bill, the cable bill, the water bill, the phone bill. Mom would leave them there with little sticky notes. "Can you handle this one? This month is tight for me. You're working full-time, right?" I was working full-time, but I was also paying for diapers and formula and daycare and my own mounting debts. But every time I tried to talk to Mom about it, she'd remind me that she was letting me stay there rent-free, that she was babysitting sometimes, that this was the least I could do. Rent-free was a lie. By the end of my first month back, I was paying more to live in her spare bedroom than I would have paid for my own apartment. And the babysitting she did was sporadic and came with constant complaints. Emma was too loud. Noah cried too much. I was raising them wrong. They needed discipline. She'd watch them for a few hours, then present me with a bill for her time. $20 an hour for watching her own grandchildren. I stayed for 3 years. 3 years of paying most of the household expenses while being treated like a burden. 3 years of working overtime shifts so I could save money only to have Mom come to me with another emergency that required my emergency fund. 3 years of watching Jenna and Megan come and go as they pleased, contributing nothing while I carried the weight of keeping the lights on and food in the fridge. Jenna had her own apartment by then, paid for partially by Mom and partially by a boyfriend who came and went. She'd visit on weekends, eat the groceries I'd bought, use the Wi-Fi I paid for, and then leave again without so much as a thank you. Megan was still living at home technically, but she treated the house like a hotel. She'd disappear for days at a time, crashing with friends, then come back and complain that there was no good food in the house or that the internet was too slow. I was the only one holding anything together. I was the only one making sure the bills got paid, the only one making sure there was toilet paper and dish soap and all the mundane necessities that keep a household running. And I was exhausted, bone-deep, soul-crushingly exhausted. When I finally saved enough to move out, I felt like I was breaking free from prison. I found a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It was in an older building, the carpet was stained, the appliances were from the 1980s, but it was mine. Mine and my kids. A place where I could set my own rules, where I didn't owe anyone anything, where I could just breathe. The day I moved out, Mom cried. Real tears streaming down her face as she helped me carry boxes to my beat-up Honda. I can't believe you're leaving me here all alone, after everything I've done for you, after I took you in when you had nowhere else to go. The guilt was immediate and overwhelming. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was abandoning her when she needed me. But then I looked at Emma and Noah sitting in the back seat of my car, excited about their new room, and I knew I had to do this. For them. For us. We needed a space that was ours. I hugged Mom goodbye and drove away, determined that things were going to be different now. I was going to set boundaries. I was going to build a life for my kids. I was going to finally put myself and my children first. The requests never stopped. If anything, they intensified. Now that I wasn't under the same roof, the calls came at all hours, morning, afternoon, night. Didn't matter if I was at work or helping Emma with homework or trying to get Noah to sleep. The phone would ring, and it would be an emergency that only I could solve. Mom needed help with her car payment. Again. Her hours had been cut. Again. Just $200 to tide her over. Megan needed money for textbooks. She'd enrolled in a graphic design course at the community college, her third attempt at finding a career path. She needed $500 for supplies. She promised this time was different, that she was really serious about this. Jenna needed a loan for a security deposit. Her boyfriend had kicked her out after a fight, and she needed first and last month's rent on a new place. $1,500. She swore she'd pay me back as soon as she got her tax refund. I sent the money because what else could I do? Let my little sister be homeless. She never paid me back. The tax refund, when it came, went toward a vacation with her new boyfriend. I saw the photos on Instagram. They went to Miami. She wore a new bikini in every photo, drank expensive cocktails, stayed at a beachfront hotel. But she couldn't pay me back the $1,500. I started keeping a spreadsheet. Every dollar I sent, every promise to pay me back, every excuse. I told myself it was for practical reasons, so I could keep track of who owed me what. But really, it was evidence. Evidence of a pattern I was too scared to fully acknowledge. At the top of the spreadsheet in bold letters, I wrote, family loans. But as the months went by and nothing was ever repaid, I changed it to family gifts, because that's what they were. Gifts I couldn't afford to give, but couldn't seem to stop giving. I worked at Regional Medical Center as a medical assistant. It was a decent job with decent pay and decent benefits, which in my world meant I could almost cover my bills without going into debt every month. Almost. I worked the day shift, which meant I could drop Emma and Noah at school before work and pick them up after. I budgeted carefully. Generic everything. Store brand cereal. Thrift store clothes. I cut my own hair. We didn't go out to eat. We didn't go to movies. Every dollar was accounted for, stretched as far as it could possibly go. But it was never enough because I couldn't say no. Every time Mom called, every time one of my sisters needed something, I rearranged my budget. I put off Emma's dental appointment because Megan needed money for car repairs. I told Noah he couldn't join the soccer team because I'd just sent Jenna money for some crisis I can't even remember now. My kids went without so my family could have more. Emma started asking questions when she was 7. Mommy, why did Aunt Jenna get a new iPhone when you said we couldn't get tablets for school? I didn't have a good answer. Mommy, why does Grandma always say we can't afford things but she just got her nails done out of the mouths of babes? My 7-year-old could see what I had been denying for years. I was being used, but I couldn't stop. Every time I thought about setting a boundary about saying no, the guilt would crush me. These were the people who raised me. This was my family. This was what family did. We helped each other, except it only ever seemed to go one direction. When Emma had needed emergency dental work after she fell off the monkey bars at school when the bill was $800 and my insurance only covered half, I called Mom asking if she could help. Just a loan. I'd pay her back within 2 months. She said she didn't have it. But 3 days later, I saw on Facebook that she'd bought a new designer purse. $600. When I needed new tires on my car because mine were so bald, they were dangerous when I asked Jenna if she could contribute even $50 toward them, since I'd just sent her $500 the month before she said she was broke. Then she posted Instagram stories from a concert that weekend. Floor seats. Those tickets were at least $200 each. The pattern was so clear, but I kept ignoring it. I kept telling myself that next time would be different. Next time they'd appreciate what I did. Next time they'd actually pay me back. Next time they'd consider my needs too. But next time never came. It was always just one more crisis, one more emergency, one more time. And I was always the solution. Then Jenna got engaged. She called me on a Tuesday evening right as I was helping Emma with her math homework. She was crying, but happy crying, the kind that makes your voice shake with joy. Addie, he proposed, Marcus proposed, we're getting married. I felt genuine happiness for her in that moment. Despite everything, despite the money and the broken promises and the way she'd treated me, she was still my little sister. I still remembered teaching her to ride a bike, braiding her hair for school pictures, holding her hand during thunderstorms when she was scared. Jenna, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Tell me everything. She gushed for 20 minutes about the proposal. He'd taken her to the beach at sunset, gotten down on one knee in the sand, the whole romantic production. The ring was beautiful, a full carat diamond in a platinum setting. I didn't ask how much it cost, but I could guess. At least $5,000, probably more. For a guy who claimed he was too broke to help Jenna pay rent 3 months ago, he certainly found money for that ring. We're thinking a fall wedding, Jenna continued, her voice bubbling with excitement. September or October when the weather is perfect. And Addie, I want you to be my maid of honor. Maid of honor. The words should have filled me with warmth, with the honor of being chosen for such an important role. Instead, I felt dread pool in my stomach. I knew what being maid of honor meant. Planning the bridal shower, organizing the bachelorette party, and inevitably paying for a significant portion of it all. I'm honored, Jenna. Really, that means so much. I can't wait to start planning. Mom already has so many ideas. We're thinking something really elegant, sophisticated. This is going to be the wedding of my dreams. The wedding of her dreams. I hung up the phone an hour later after listening to her describe her vision of white roses and champagne toasts and a string quartet, and I felt sick. Emma looked up at me from her homework. Is Aunt Jenna getting married? I nodded. Are we invited? She asked. Of course, baby. Of course we're invited. But the doubt had already started creeping in. Would we really be invited? Or would we be an afterthought, an obligation, something to be tolerated rather than celebrated? 2 weeks later, Mom called a family meeting. Those words alone were enough to make my anxiety spike. Angela only called family meetings when she needed something big, something that required a coordinated effort to manipulate me into agreeing. I almost said I couldn't make it, almost invented an excuse, but guilt won out. It always did. I dropped Emma and Noah at my neighbor's apartment, a sweet elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who charged me $10 an hour to watch them, and drove to Mom's house. Everyone was already there when I arrived: Mom, Jenna, Megan, and Rick. Rick was Mom's boyfriend of 5 years, a quiet man in his late 50s who worked as an electrician. He'd always been kind to me, almost gentle, in the way he'd ask how I was doing if I needed anything. He was probably the only member of that household who saw me as a person rather than a resource. He gave me a sympathetic look as I walked in, and that scared me more than anything. If Rick felt sorry for me, this was going to be bad. We gathered in Mom's cramped living room, the same living room where I'd spent 3 years sleeping on a fold-out couch with 2 small children paying most of the bills while being treated like a burden. Jenna was practically vibrating with excitement, her phone in her hand, ready to show us something. Megan was scrolling through her own phone, barely looking up when I entered. Mom sat in her armchair, the throne from which she ruled her little kingdom, and gestured for me to sit on the couch. "Okay, girls, thank you all for coming." Mom started as if we'd had a choice. "As you know, Jenna is getting married and we need to start planning. Jenna, honey, show them the venue." Jenna's face lit up like Christmas morning. She pulled up a website on her phone and started scrolling through photos. "This is the Crystal Lake Manor. Isn't it gorgeous?" She passed the phone to me first, and I had to admit it was stunning. The kind of place you see in wedding magazines and Instagram posts. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine lake with views that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. Marble floors that gleamed in the professional photography. Gardens with manicured hedges and flower beds that bloomed in perfect rows. A grand staircase where the bride could make an entrance. A terrace for cocktail hour overlooking the water. "It's beautiful, Jenna," I said, honestly handing the phone back to her. "It really is." "It's perfect," she breathed. "It's everything I've ever dreamed of. Can you imagine getting married there? It's like a fairy tale." Then Mom cleared her throat, and I knew we were getting to the real point of this meeting. "The thing is, the venue has very limited availability, and it's quite popular. If we want to book it for September, we need to put down a deposit soon. Like this week soon." My stomach dropped. "How much is the deposit?" Jenna and Mom exchanged a look. $5,000, Jenna said quickly. "But that's just the deposit to hold the date. The total cost for the venue is actually quite reasonable for a place of this caliber." "How reasonable?" I asked, though I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. $25,000 for the venue rental. That includes the ceremony space, the reception hall, tables, chairs, basic linens, and access to the bridal suite and grounds for photos. The catering is separate, obviously, and we'd need to bring in our own florist and photographer and everything else, but the venue itself is $25,000. $25,000. I let that number sink in. $25,000. For one day. For a party that would last 6 hours. $25,000 that could pay for 2 years of Emma's orthodontist appointments that she desperately needed. That could fix my car's transmission that was slipping dangerously. That could create an actual emergency fund so I could stop living paycheck to paycheck. That could give my children things they needed and wanted instead of watching them go without, so their aunt could have a fairy tale wedding. "That's a lot of money," I said, carefully trying to keep my voice neutral. "I know it seems like a lot," Jenna said, reaching out to touch my hand. "But this is my wedding, Addie. I only get to do this once. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be everything I've ever dreamed of." "What about my dreams?" I wanted to ask. What about Emma's dreams of being on the dance team at school? Dreams I'd had to crush because the costume and recital fees were too expensive. What about Noah's dreams of going to summer camp with his friends? Dreams that died because I couldn't afford the $300 registration fee. But I didn't ask those questions because I already knew the answers. Their dreams mattered. Mine didn't. My children's needs were negotiable. Jenna's wants were paramount. Mom leaned forward, fixing me with that look she'd perfected over the years, the one that was half pleading, half demanding. "Addie, honey, I know you have that credit card with the high limit, the one with the good interest rate that you got for emergencies. This is a family emergency. We need to secure this venue before someone else books it." "A wedding isn't an emergency, Mom. An emergency is a broken bone or a car accident or losing your job. A wedding is a planned event." "Don't be pedantic, Adeline. You know what I mean. This is important to your sister. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event." Megan looked up from her phone long enough to add her 2 cents. "Come on, Addie. Don't be stingy. You make decent money, and it's not like you have a social life or anything. What else are you spending money on? Food. I wanted to scream. Rent, utilities, school supplies, medicine, diapers, even though Noah was mostly potty trained, clothes that my kids had outgrown, field trip fees, birthday presents for their friends' parties, gas to get to work, insurance, credit card payments on the debt you've all contributed to. The list was endless, but they'd never understand because they'd never had to think about those things. I'd always been there to handle it for them. Rick spoke up for the first time, his voice gentle but firm. Have you all discussed how the costs will be split if Addie is putting down the deposit? Who's paying for what? Thank you, Rick, I thought. Finally, someone asking the logical questions. Mom waved her hand dismissively. We'll figure all that out as we go. The important thing right now is securing the venue. Everything else can be divided up fairly later. Fairly. That word had lost all meaning in this family. Fair would have been Jenna and Megan helping pay the household bills during those 3 years I lived here. Fair would have been someone paying me back even one of the many loans I'd given. Fair would have been someone considering my financial situation before demanding I fund their dreams. We'll all chip in, Jenna assured me, squeezing my hand. Mom will contribute. Megan will help. Marcus and his family will pay for stuff too. And I'm working so I can cover things. We're not expecting you to pay for everything, Addie. Just the deposit to get us started. We'll all contribute as we go, I promise. Promises. I had a whole spreadsheet of broken promises. But I looked at Jenna's face so full of hope and excitement, and I felt the familiar weight of obligation settle over me. This was my baby sister. I'd practically raised her. I'd changed her diapers, helped her with homework, scared away her nightmares. How could I say no to her wedding? Just the deposit, I confirmed. And everyone else will contribute their share for everything else. Absolutely, Mom said firmly. We're all in this together. This is a family event. Everyone will do their part. I should have trusted my gut. I should have said no. I should have walked out of that house and never looked back. But I didn't. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I looked at my credit card balance. I had $9,000 available on a card with a $12,000 limit. $5,000 for the deposit would leave me with $4,000 for actual emergencies. It made me nervous having my cushion reduced like that, but it would be okay. They were all going to contribute. They promised. I need it in writing. I said, surprising even myself. I need everyone to sign something saying they'll contribute their share. I need to see a breakdown of costs and who's responsible for what. Mom's face tightened. Adeline, we're family. We don't need contracts between family members. That's insulting. It's not insulting, it's smart, Rick interjected. Addie's right. If everyone is planning to contribute, there's no harm in putting it in writing. It'll actually help keep everyone accountable and organized. Jenna nodded eagerly. I don't mind. We can write it all down. We can make a spreadsheet that'll actually be helpful for planning anyway. We need to keep track of everything. She pulled out a notebook from her bag, already decorated with wedding magazine clippings and Pinterest printouts. She started writing as we talked. Venue deposit $5,000 Addie. Venue final payment split 4 ways between Addie, Mom, Megan, and Marcus's family. Catering deposit Megan. Florist Mom. Photography split between Jenna and Marcus. Dress Jenna, and on and on. It looked official. It looked like a real plan. It looked like they were serious about this being a group effort. I took a photo of the notebook pages with my phone just in case. Then I logged into my credit card account and transferred $5,000 to Mom's bank account so she could write the check to the Crystal Lake Manor. The transaction went through immediately. My available credit dropped to $4,000. My stomach churned with anxiety, but I pushed it down. This was going to be okay. They'd promised. This time would be different. That was 6 months ago. In those 6 months, I had put every single additional wedding expense on my credit card. The wedding planner consultation fee of $1,500. Jenna insisted we needed a professional to coordinate everything. The floral design deposit of $800 because Jenna wanted roses, peonies, and hydrangeas all out of season, which meant expensive. The photographer's retainer of $1,200 for someone Jenna found on Instagram, whose portfolio was admittedly stunning, but whose prices were astronomical. The invitations from a boutique stationery company, $900 for 200 custom letterpress invitations with calligraphy addressing. The cake tasting fee $300 just to sample cakes, not even to order one yet. Every time I got the bill, I'd text the family group chat. Hey, the florist needs the deposit. Who's covering this per our agreement? Silence. Or worse, excuses. Megan had lost her part-time retail job. Again. Mom's hours at her job had been cut. Again. Jenna and Marcus were saving for their honeymoon and couldn't spare anything right now. Could I just cover it and they'd pay me back, they promised. My credit card balance climbed. $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. I hit my limit and had to request an increase, which they gave me because I'd always been responsible, always paid my bills, never missed a payment. They raised my limit to $18,000. I felt sick about it, but told myself it would be okay. The wedding was only 2 months away now. Soon this would all be over and they'd pay me back. They'd promised. I started picking up extra shifts at the hospital. I worked weekends. I worked overtime during the week. I was exhausted running on coffee and anxiety, but I needed the money. Emma needed new shoes for school, but I bought her a pair from the clearance rack at Target that were half a size too big so she could grow into them. Noah wanted to join the soccer team with his friends. The registration fee was $125. I told him we couldn't afford it this season, maybe next year. He cried. He was 7 years old and he cried because all his friends were playing soccer and he couldn't. I held him and apologized and hated myself. Meanwhile, Jenna was posting on Instagram constantly. Photos of wedding dress shopping where she'd tried on gowns that cost more than my monthly rent. Photos of her and Marcus at fancy restaurants celebrating their engagement with expensive bottles of wine. Photos of her bridal shower, which I'd paid for, that cost $900 for brunch at an upscale hotel. She posted pictures of her engagement ring, her manicures, her wedding planning binder with color-coded tabs and detailed schedules. And I kept paying. The venue needed a second payment. $5,000. I put it on the credit card. The caterer needed their deposit. $3,000. On the card. The DJ needed to be secured. $800. The card. The rental company for chairs and linens and table settings because apparently the venue's basic offerings weren't good enough. $1,200. The card. Every time I logged into my credit card account, I felt physically ill. $15,000, $16,000, $17,000. By 8 months into this nightmare, I owed $17,432 on a card that I'd opened for emergencies for protection for peace of mind. And I had spent it all on a wedding for a sister who had stopped even pretending to appreciate it. The family group chat had become a wasteland of my messages. The venue needs the final payment of $15,000 by the end of this week. Per our original agreement, this was supposed to be split 4 ways. That's $3,750 each. Can everyone send me their portion by Wednesday? No response. I sent a follow-up the next day. Nothing. I called Mom. She didn't answer. I called Jenna. Voicemail. I called Megan. She texted back, "Can't talk at work." I felt the familiar panic rising in my chest. They weren't going to pay. They had never planned to pay. I had been a fool to believe them, but what choice did I have now? The wedding was in 10 days. If I didn't pay the final venue bill, everything would be canceled, and I'd lose not just the deposit, but my relationship with my entire family. They'd never forgive me. I'd be the villain who ruined Jenna's special day. So I did what I always did. I paid. I transferred another $15,000, pushing my credit card beyond its limit, requiring me to call and beg for a temporary increase, explaining that it was for a family wedding, promising I'd start paying it down immediately after. They approved the increase. My new limit was $35,000. My balance was $32,432. I had $2,500 in available credit, which was supposed to be my safety net for the next 3 months until I could start seriously paying this down. I felt the walls closing in. I couldn't breathe right. I started having panic attacks at work, having to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry and hyperventilate into paper towels. At night, I'd lie awake doing math in my head. If I paid $1,000 a month toward the credit card, it would take me 3 years to pay off, and that was if I never charged another thing. But I would need to charge things. Emma's asthma medication. Groceries when we ran out before payday. Gas for my car. The minimum would balloon with interest. I'd be paying this off for 5 years, maybe more. 5 years of my life, of my children's lives, sacrificed for one day that I was apparently now too inconvenient to attend. I was standing in line at that pharmacy holding Emma's medicine, mentally calculating how I'd cover this month's electric bill when my phone buzzed with that group text, the one that changed everything, the one that finally made me see clearly what I should have seen years ago. I took a screenshot of that message thread. Angela's text, "Don't come to the wedding. You and those kids will just make everything awkward." Jenna's agreement. Megan's laughing emoji. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Then I bent down, helped clean up the broken medication bottle, apologized to the pharmacist, paid for a replacement with my nearly maxed out credit card, and walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just breathing, just thinking. Just feeling the weight of 14 years of being used finally crashed down on me with full force. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I looked at my credit card statement. $32,432. $32,000. I scrolled through the charges. Every single one was for this wedding. Not one charge was something I had wanted or needed. Every dollar had gone to a party I was now uninvited from. I started laughing. Sitting there in my car in the pharmacy parking lot, I laughed until tears ran down my face. The absurdity of it all. The sheer audacity. They had bled me dry and then told me not to come. They had taken everything I had and then decided I was the problem. I laughed because the alternative was screaming, and I was in a public parking lot with my daughter's medication in a bag on the passenger seat. When I finally stopped laughing, I felt calm. Eerily, perfectly calm. I opened my contacts and scrolled to Daniel's number. Daniel Kim, my friend from that business law class I'd taken years ago. We'd stayed in touch, grabbing coffee every few months. He was a lawyer now, working at a small firm that specialized in contract law. I'd never needed his services before, but I needed them now. "Daniel, I need your help. Can I come by your office tomorrow?" My voice was steady cold even. He must have heard something in my tone, because he agreed immediately, no questions asked. We set a time for the next morning. Then I drove home, put Emma and Noah to bed, kissed their foreheads, and opened my laptop. I pulled up every email, every text message, every receipt, every contract related to this wedding. I had documentation of everything. Every promise, every expense, every excuse. I organized it all into a folder, backed it up to 3 different places, and then I started researching. Contract law, breach of contract, cancellation policies, refund procedures, deposits versus payments, who has standing to cancel, primary signatory rights. I read until 3 in the morning, taking notes in a fresh notebook, my handwriting getting more confident with each page. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was armed. I had information. I had documentation. And most importantly, I had rights. The next morning, I dropped Emma and Noah at school, called in sick to work, and drove to Daniel's office. It was a modest space in a professional building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like coffee and paper and possibility. Daniel greeted me with a hug and led me to his office, closing the door behind us. "Talk to me, Addie. What's going on?" I told him everything. The whole sordid story, from signing student loans at 16 to last night's text message disinviting me from the wedding I'd financed. I showed him my credit card statement, the family group chat screenshots, the original agreement Jenna had written in her notebook that I'd photographed. I showed him every receipt, every email, every piece of evidence I had. It took an hour to go through it all. By the end, Daniel's expression had gone from concerned to angry on my behalf to calculating. "Addie, you realize what this is, right?" he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is financial abuse. What they've done to you, especially with that student loan co-signing when you were a minor, is arguably fraud. What they're doing now with this wedding is absolutely exploitation. You've been funding their lives while sacrificing your own and your children's well-being." Hearing him say it out loud in his professional lawyer voice made something crack inside my chest. I started crying. Not gentle tears, but huge, gulping sobs. Years of suppressed rage and hurt and exhaustion pouring out in Daniel's office while he handed me tissues and waited patiently. When I finally got myself under control, I wiped my eyes and looked at him. "I need to know my options. Can I cancel this wedding?" Legally, can I just pull the plug on everything? Daniel opened his laptop and started pulling up documents. Let's look at the contracts. You said you're listed as the primary signatory on everything. I nodded. He spent the next 20 minutes reviewing photos of the contracts I'd sent him. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer. Every single one listed me as the primary contact, the person responsible for payment, the one with contractual authority. Addie, you have complete legal control here. You're the client as far as these vendors are concerned. Your mother isn't on any of these contracts. Your sisters aren't. You are, which means you can cancel everything and they have no legal standing to stop you. What about the money I've already paid? He pulled up the venue contract specifically. Let's see. Here's the cancellation clause. If you cancel more than 7 days before the event, you forfeit the deposit but aren't liable for any additional charges. Under 7 days, you'd owe 50% of the total contract value. How many days until the wedding? 10 days, I said. Then you're in the safe zone. If you cancel now, you'll lose the $5,000 deposit, but you won't owe the remaining $15,000 for the venue. That's $10,000 you'll save. For the other vendors, let me check. He scrolled through the other contracts I'd sent. Caterer has a similar policy. Deposit is non-refundable, but no additional charges if you cancel before the week of. Florist, same. Photographer, they might require payment in full since the wedding is so close, but that's only $1,200. DJ, you might lose that deposit. But overall, if you cancel now, you'll lose maybe $8,000 or $9,000 in deposits, but you'll avoid paying another $20,000 that you'd owe as final balances for everything. The wedding as budgeted was going to cost about $50,000 total, right? $52,000 according to the last estimate. I confirmed, my voice hollow. $52,000 for a party, for 1 day, for people who didn't even want me there. So if you cancel now, you lose about $9,000, but you save over $40,000 in charges that haven't hit yet. And honestly, Addie, you could potentially sue your family for the money you've already spent under false pretenses, but that would be a long, expensive court battle, and you'd have to prove they never intended to pay you back, which is hard. It's probably not worth it. The better revenge, if we're being honest, is just cutting them off completely and letting them deal with the consequences of their actions. They'll have no wedding, no venue, and they'll finally understand what happens when you burn your bridges. Revenge. That word sat heavy in the air between us. Is that what I wanted, revenge? I thought about it. Thought about Jenna's face when she realized her dream wedding was canceled. Thought about Mom's panic when she had to explain to all their friends and family that there was no venue. Thought about Megan's scramble to find somewhere, anywhere, that could host a wedding in 10 days. I thought about it and I realized something. I didn't want revenge. Revenge implied I still cared what happened to them. What I wanted was freedom. I wanted to be done. I wanted to walk away from this burning building and never look back. I want to cancel everything. I said, my voice steady now. Every vendor, every service, I want it all canceled, and I want to do it today. Daniel pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Okay, here's what we'll do. I'll draft cancellation letters for each vendor citing the cancellation clauses in your contracts. You'll send them via email, certified mail, and we'll call to confirm. We want documentation of everything. Once it's done, it's done. They can't force you to reinstate services. They can't force you to pay more than what the contracts stipulate. You'll take a financial hit with the deposits, but you'll save yourself from drowning in $40,000 more debt. We spent the next 3 hours calling vendors, sending emails, and documenting every cancellation. Melissa Chin at the Crystal Lake Manor was surprised but professional. Adeline, I'm so sorry to hear this. Is everything okay? I kept my voice neutral. Things have changed, Melissa. I need to cancel per the terms of our contract. I understand I'll forfeit the deposit, and I accept that. She processed the cancellation while I was on the phone with her, sending me confirmation via email within minutes. The venue was released. That beautiful venue with its lake views and crystal chandeliers was now available for someone else's dream wedding. Just not my sister's. The caterer was more difficult. They tried to push back, saying 10 days' notice wasn't enough, that they'd already ordered specialty ingredients for the menu. Daniel got on the phone with them, calmly citing the cancellation clause in the contract, and they backed down. Deposit forfeited, no additional charges. The florist was apologetic but understanding. The photographer was annoyed but professional. The DJ tried to charge me a cancellation fee that wasn't in our contract. Daniel threatened to report them to the Better Business Bureau. They waived the fee. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, everything was canceled. Every vendor had sent written confirmation. I had a folder on my laptop titled Wedding Cancellation, with every document, every email, every receipt. I was out about $9,000 in lost deposits, but I had saved $43,000 in charges that would have bankrupted me. I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Daniel walked me out to my car. Addie, what you did today took courage. You stood up for yourself. You set a boundary. I know it doesn't feel good right now, but you did the right thing. I hugged him, thanking him for his help. He refused to charge me for his time. This one's on the house. Consider it my gift to your freedom. I drove home and sat in my car for a long time before going inside. I opened the family group chat. I looked at that message from Angela again. Don't come to the wedding. You and those kids will just make everything awkward. I typed out a response. Just one sentence. Welcome to reality. Then I hit send and immediately blocked Angela's number. Then Jenna's. Then Megan's. All of them gone from my phone in a matter of seconds. For exactly 30 seconds, my phone was blissfully silent. Then it started ringing. Unknown number. I declined. Another unknown number. Declined. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Addie, it's Mom calling from Rick's phone. You need to call me immediately. I blocked that number too. More calls. More texts. They were using other people's phones, friends' phones, trying desperately to reach me. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and set it so only contacts in my phone could get through. The only person who got through was Rick, and I accepted his call. Adeline, I need you to know that what's happening over here is complete chaos. His voice was strained but calm, like he was narrating a disaster from a safe distance. Jenna is hysterical. She's been crying for 2 hours straight. Your mother is screaming, throwing things. She broke a plate. Megan is calling everyone she knows, trying to find someone to blame or someone who can fix this. But I want you to know something, and I need you to hear me. You don't deserve any of this. You never did. What they've done to you is unconscionable. Thank you, Rick, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That means more than you know. Your mother is demanding I pay for a replacement venue. She wants me to take out a loan or use my savings. I told her absolutely not. I told her I won't give her a single penny unless she apologizes to you first, and we both know that's never going to happen. She'd rather die than admit she's wrong. I also told her that if she keeps this up, I'm leaving. I've had one foot out the door for years now, staying mostly because I thought maybe I could be a buffer someone on your side in that house. But I see now that it doesn't matter. They're going to keep taking from you until there's nothing left, and I won't be party to that anymore. Rick, you don't have to leave because of me. You shouldn't have to blow up your life over this. Addie, I'm not blowing up my life. I'm fixing it. I've been miserable in that house for longer than I care to admit. I stay because change is scary and leaving is hard, but watching what they did to you, watching them bleed you dry and then toss you aside like garbage, that was my wake-up call. If I stay now, I'm complicit, so I'm leaving. I already started looking at apartments. After we hung up, I sat in my car until Emma and Noah's school let out. I picked them up, took them for ice cream, a small extravagance I usually couldn't afford, and watched them laugh and chase each other around the park next to the ice cream shop. They had no idea what was happening. They didn't know that I'd just burned down the bridge to their grandmother and aunts. They were just happy kids enjoying ice cream on a random Tuesday, and that's all I wanted for them. Happiness, simplicity, a childhood that wasn't weighed down by adult problems and toxic family dynamics. I wanted better for them than what I'd had, and that started with me being strong enough to walk away. Thursday morning, I woke up to 73 text messages and 42 missed calls, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I blocked every single one. I made myself coffee, got Emma and Noah ready for school, and took them to Mrs. Chin's for after-school care. Then I got an idea. A wild, possibly brilliant idea. I called Carla Martinez and Denise Jang, my friends from college. We'd stayed close over the years, having coffee every few months, texting regularly. They'd gotten engaged 2 years ago and had been planning their dream wedding at the Crystal Lake Manor when the pandemic hit. Everything had shut down. They'd had to cancel lost their deposit and had never been able to rebook because the venue was always booked out years in advance and was so expensive. They'd been planning to just do a courthouse wedding and maybe a backyard party someday. They deserved better. I called Carla. Hey, this is going to sound absolutely insane, but hear me out. Are you and Denise still engaged? I could hear the smile in her voice when she answered. Yes, we've just been waiting for the right time and place. Why? The Crystal Lake Manor just became available for this Saturday, and I can get you in at a fraction of the cost. Are you interested? There was a long pause. Then I heard Carla yell to Denise in another room. Baby, pick up the other phone. Addie is asking if we want to get married at Crystal Lake this weekend. I heard scrambling the sound of a phone being grabbed and then Denise's voice breathless. What, Addie? What are you talking about? I explained carefully, leaving out most of the drama with my family. I just said there had been a cancellation, the venue was available, and they could book it if they moved fast. The venue manager had indicated she might be willing to offer it at a reduced rate to avoid having an empty Saturday. It would still cost them, but significantly less than the original price. If they could pull together their families and friends for a last-minute wedding, they could have their dream day. The next hour was a whirlwind. Carla and Denise Conference called me back with their families. They had a marriage license that was still valid, filed before the pandemic. They had been together for 6 years, engaged for 2. They'd weathered the pandemic together, had bought a house together, were already committed in every way that mattered except the legal paper. They wanted this. They called Melissa at the Crystal Lake Manor I conferenced in to vouch for them, and by noon, their wedding was booked for Saturday. 3 days away. They spent that afternoon calling everyone they knew, scrambling to pull together a ceremony and reception. I spent Friday helping them plan. I had already paid for a photographer and videographer. The contracts were in my name. I called them and explained there had been a change in the bride and groom, but the date and venue were the same. They were fine with it. I transferred those contracts to Carla and Denise as my wedding gift. $1,200 of photography that would now document their love story instead of my sister's. It felt like the best money I'd ever spent. Carla and Denise pulled together the rest. Their families contributed toward a simple but elegant catering package. They ordered flowers from a local florist, nothing fancy but beautiful. They called friends who were musicians and put together a playlist. They kept the guest list intimate, maybe 60 people, all of whom genuinely loved them. They scrambled to find outfits. Carla wore a stunning white pantsuit. Denise wore a flowing white dress with lace sleeves. They both looked radiantly, impossibly happy. Meanwhile, across town, my biological family was in meltdown mode. Through friends of friends, through the grapevine of people I'd lost touch with, but who still followed the drama on social media, I heard snippets. Jenna was a wreck, unable to stop crying. Mom was making calls to every venue in the tri-state area, trying to find somewhere, anywhere that could host a wedding on a week's notice. Everything was either booked or astronomically expensive for a last-minute event. They finally settled on Riverside Banquet Hall, a venue on the cheaper side of town, the kind of place that hosts Sweet 16s and retirement parties. Fluorescent lighting, linoleum floors, plastic tablecloths, but it was available, and it was cheap. $1,500 for the day. They scrambled to pull together decorations from party stores. They called in favors from anyone who would listen. Jenna's future mother-in-law apparently stepped up with some money, covering a basic catering package and a cake from a grocery store bakery. It was going to be nothing like the wedding Jenna had envisioned, but it was happening. The show would go on. Saturday arrived. The weather was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Sunny 72 degrees, a light breeze coming off the lake. I spent the morning helping Carla and Denise get ready. I'd hired a hair and makeup artist as another gift, and I sat with them while they were pampered and perfected. We drank mimosas and laughed. Denise's mother kept crying happy tears. Carla's father told embarrassing childhood stories. It was everything a wedding morning should be. Warm, loving, joyful. The kind of morning I'd imagined my sister would have back before I knew the truth about my place in the family hierarchy. Their ceremony was at 4 in the afternoon, timed to catch the golden hour light over the lake. I stood in the back of the ceremony space watching as they exchanged vows they'd written themselves. They cried. Their families cried. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was witnessing what real love looked like. Love that was mutual, respectful, built on partnership rather than obligation. Love that asked, "How can I support you?" rather than demanded, "What can you give me?" The reception was intimate and perfect. Dinner was served on the terrace overlooking the lake. String lights were hung overhead, creating a canopy of warm light as the sun set. The photographer I'd hired took hundreds of photos capturing every smile, every kiss, every dance. Carla and Denise's first dance was to a song that made everyone tear up again. Their families gave toasts that were funny and heartfelt. Friends told stories about how they'd gotten together, how they'd known from the beginning that this was it, this was the real thing. At one point, Carla pulled me aside and hugged me tightly. "Addie, I don't know how to thank you. This is the most beautiful day of my life. I don't know what happened that made this venue available, but thank you for thinking of us. Thank you for making this possible." I hugged her back and told her the truth. "You two deserve all the happiness in the world. This day belongs to you. Enjoy every second." The reception went until midnight. There was dancing and laughter and cake and joy. So much joy. I left around 11 after helping them cut the cake and seeing them off to their honeymoon suite at the venue. I drove home, checked on Emma and Noah, who were sleeping peacefully at Mrs. Chin's apartment, and then I went to my own apartment and collapsed on my couch. My phone had been on Do Not Disturb all day. When I finally checked it, I had 217 notifications. I didn't read any of them. I just felt empty. Not sad. Not happy. Just empty. Like I'd been carrying a 100-pound weight for years and had finally set it down. My muscles didn't know how to function without the strain. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, my sister's wedding was apparently a disaster. Rick called me around 10 that night after I'd gotten home, and he was laughing. Actually laughing in a way I'd never heard before. "Adeline, I need to tell you what happened at this wedding because you won't believe it, and because you deserve to know that karma is real." The weather on that side of town apparently was completely different. While the Crystal Lake Manor enjoyed perfect sunshine, Riverside Banquet Hall got hit with a freak thunderstorm. Heavy rain, the kind that floods parking lots and leaks through old roofs. Guests had to wade through ankle-deep water to get from their cars to the building. The venue's roof was leaking in multiple places, requiring staff to put out buckets in the middle of the reception area. The sound system was old and kept screeching feedback whenever someone used the microphone. The DJ they'd hired last minute was someone's cousin who mostly played music from the 80s that nobody wanted to dance to. The grocery store cake was fine, nothing special, but the delivery person had dropped it, taking it out of the car in the rain, and they'd had to try to repair the damage with extra frosting, leaving it lumpy and lopsided. The decoration budget had been minimal, so the room looked sparse. Someone had strung up some white lights and put flowers from a craft store on the tables, but it couldn't disguise the dingy walls and worn carpet. Jenna had still worn a beautiful dress, one she'd bought with money from Marcus's mother, but in photos against that backdrop it looked out of place, like a bride who'd gotten lost on her way to a real wedding and ended up at the wrong venue. But the real chaos happened during the bouquet toss. Jenna, trying to salvage some traditional wedding fun, gathered all the single women. She stood at the front of the room, her back to them, and tossed her bouquet over her shoulder. One of her friends from college, a woman named Brittany, who I vaguely remembered from a few family gatherings, caught it, and then in front of everyone, Brittany held up the bouquet and yelled out, "Maybe I'll be next since Marcus won't stop texting me." The room went silent, completely, utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Jenna spun around, her face going from confused to horrified. Marcus, who had been standing with his groomsmen, turned pale. Brittany, clearly drunk and clearly bitter about something, held up her phone. "You want to tell your wife why you sent me this message last week? Or should I read it out loud?" Chaos. Absolute chaos. Jenna started screaming. Marcus tried to grab Brittany's phone. Brittany's friends held him back. Someone's aunt yelled that this was inappropriate. Someone else yelled that Marcus was trash. Jenna's maid of honor, one of her other friends, got into a physical altercation with Brittany, and they had to be separated. Angela, trying to control the situation, got on the microphone and told everyone to calm down, that this was just a misunderstanding, that Brittany was clearly drunk and lying. But the damage was done. Half the guests left immediately, not wanting to be part of the drama. Marcus and Jenna disappeared into a side room where everyone could hear them screaming at each other. The wedding was over. Barely 3 hours after it started with people leaving in droves and Jenna sobbing in her lopsided cake-damaged dress, the whole thing fell apart. And you know what the best part is? Rick continued, still laughing. Your mother tried to blame me. She said I must have invited Brittany, that I sabotaged the wedding. I told her that I didn't make the guest list, that she and Jenna did, and that maybe if they'd spent less time disinviting people who actually cared about them and more time vetting the people they did invite, this wouldn't have happened. Then I told her I was leaving. Tonight. I'd already packed a bag. I'm staying at a hotel right now, and tomorrow I'm moving my stuff to a storage unit and finding an apartment. I'm done, Addie. I'm finally done. Rick, I'm so sorry you got pulled into this mess, I said, meaning it. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves what your family does to people, but I'm glad it happened in a weird way. I needed the push. I've been unhappy for years, and I kept making excuses to stay. But tonight, watching them implode, watching them blame everyone but themselves, I realized I was enabling them. By staying by being the reasonable one, by trying to be a buffer, I was just making it easier for them to keep being terrible. So, I'm out. I already added you as the beneficiary on my life insurance policy, by the way. I meant what I said before. You're the only one who ever treated me like family. If something happens to me, I want you and your kids taken care of, not them. Rick, you don't have to do that, I protested, but he cut me off. It's already done. The paperwork is filed, and Addie, there's something else you should know. Before I left tonight, your mother tried one last manipulation. She pulled me aside away from everyone else, and she told me that if I really cared about the family, I'd take out a loan to cover the wedding costs that you stole by canceling. She actually used that word. Stole. Like you stole something that was yours to begin with. She said it was my responsibility as the man of the house to fix this. I laughed in her face. Then I told her that I'd rather set my money on fire than give her another penny. She slapped me. In front of everyone, still at the venue. A man in his 50s, and she slapped me like a child. That's when I knew I'd stayed way too long. We talked for another hour. Rick told me more details about the wedding disaster. Apparently, Megan had spent most of the reception crying in the bathroom because her ex-boyfriend had shown up with a new girlfriend. Apparently, Marcus's family was furious about the Brittany incident and were threatening to push for an annulment. Apparently, Angela had gotten drunk on cheap wine and gotten into an argument with one of the venue staff about the leaking roof, as if it was their fault it had rained. The whole thing was a spectacular implosion. By the time I hung up with Rick, it was past midnight. I sat on my couch in the quiet of my apartment and tried to process everything. Jenna's dream wedding had turned into a nightmare. The beautiful venue I'd paid for had been the backdrop for someone else's perfect day. My family was in chaos, broken, and blaming everyone but themselves. And I was free. For the first time in my adult life, I was free. The phone calls would keep coming for a while, I knew that. They'd keep trying to reach me, to guilt me, to manipulate me back into the fold. But I didn't have to answer. I didn't have to engage. I didn't have to set myself on fire to keep them warm anymore. Sunday was quiet. I slept in a luxury I hadn't afforded myself in years. I made Emma and Noah a big breakfast of pancakes and bacon. We spent the day at the park, just the three of us flying kites and feeding ducks and being together. They asked about Grandma and their aunts, wondering when we'd see them next. I told them honestly that things were complicated right now, but that we were okay. We were more than okay. We were going to be great. That evening, after the kids were in bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, assuming it was another family member trying to reach me from someone else's phone. But something made me look. It was Jenna. She must have gotten a new number or was texting from someone else's phone. The message read, "I hope you're proud of yourself. Everyone is saying how cold and heartless you are. You ruined my wedding. You ruined everything. I'll never forgive you." I looked at that message for a long time, read it over and over, waited for the familiar guilt to rise up, for the voice in my head to tell me I'd been too harsh, that I should apologize, that I should fix this. But that voice didn't come. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a calm, clear nothing. I didn't type a response. I just deleted the message and blocked the number. Then I opened up my photos and looked at the pictures I'd taken at Carla and Denise's wedding. Their smiling faces, their families dancing, the beautiful venue with the lake in the background. That was what a celebration of love looked like. That was what family should be. Support and joy and genuine happiness for each other. Monday morning, I went to work. My coworkers asked how my weekend was, and I told them it was good, quiet, peaceful. They didn't need to know about the wedding I'd canceled or the bridges I'd burned. That was my business, my pain, my freedom. I worked, my shift came home, helped Emma with her homework, played trucks with Noah, and made dinner. It was ordinary, beautifully, perfectly ordinary. Monday evening, as I was cleaning up from dinner, my phone rang. Angela. I'd forgotten to block her original number after she'd gotten a new phone the other day. For half a second, I considered answering. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done. Maybe this could be the moment where things changed. But I looked at that ringing phone and knew better. People like Angela don't apologize. They don't change. They just find new ways to make their problems everyone else's responsibility. I let it go to voicemail. Then I blocked the number. A few minutes later, I got a text from yet another unknown number. You've proven your point, but we're still family. Classic Angela. Acknowledging that I had a point, but refusing to actually apologize or take responsibility. Just a demand that I fall back in line because family. I looked at my kids playing together in their blanket fort, their giggles filling the small apartment with genuine joy. They were my family. They were my priority. They were the reason I'd finally found the strength to walk away. I typed out a response, my fingers steady. I didn't cut anyone off. I just stopped funding my own mistreatment. I hit send, then immediately blocked that number too. Then I went through my phone and changed my number completely. A fresh start. A clean slate. No more blocked numbers piling up. Just a new number that only the people who actually mattered would have. I gave it to Mrs. Chen, to Daniel, to Rick, to my boss, to Emma and Noah's schools, to a handful of real friends. That was it. Everyone else could find me if they really needed to, but they'd have to work for it. Tuesday brought another text, this time from Rick's old number, but it was Megan using his phone. Addie Mom is in the hospital. She had a panic attack and chest pains. You need to come. She's asking for you. My first instinct was to panic, to drop everything and run to the hospital. But I forced myself to stop, to think, to breathe. If Angela was really in medical danger, truly in crisis, they would have called from the hospital. They would have had a doctor or nurse call me. This was manipulation. This was a tactic to get me to engage. So I didn't respond. I didn't block Rick's number because he might actually need to reach me. But I didn't respond to Megan's message. An hour later, another text from the same number. Never mind. She's fine. They're releasing her. You're a terrible daughter. I still didn't respond. Wednesday was my breaking point in a different way. I got a notification from my credit card company. My minimum payment due had increased. Of course it had. $32,000 in debt, and the minimum payment was now $850 a month. Nearly $1,000 just to cover interest and a tiny bit of principal. At this rate, it would take me 8 years to pay off this card. 8 years. I sat down and cried. Really, truly cried. Not the angry tears or the frustrated tears, but defeated, exhausted tears. I'd been so focused on the righteousness of walking away, on the moral victory of finally setting boundaries, that I hadn't fully processed the financial devastation I was still drowning in. I was free from my family, but I wasn't free from the debt they'd created, and that debt was going to haunt me for years. I called Daniel that evening. I need to know if there's any way to get some of this money back, any legal recourse. I know you said it would be expensive and difficult, but Daniel, I'm drowning. This debt is going to ruin me. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that broke my heart. Addie, I've been thinking about your case since you left my office. I've consulted with a few colleagues, looked at the documentation you provided. Legally, you might have a case for fraud or financial exploitation, but proving that your family never intended to pay you back is nearly impossible. They can claim they fully intended to contribute, that circumstances changed, that it was all a misunderstanding. And even if you won, which is unlikely, the cost of litigation would be tens of thousands of dollars. Lawyers' court fees, expert witnesses. You'd spend years in court, spend money you don't have, and possibly end up with nothing. These cases almost never end well for the plaintiff. I'm sorry, Addie. The best thing you can do is cut your losses, focus on paying down the debt, and never give them another penny. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my car outside Mrs. Chin's apartment where I'd just picked up my kids, and I screamed. Just screamed at the top of my lungs until my throat was raw. Emma and Noah were already inside my apartment with a frozen pizza I'd left out for them so they didn't see their mother falling apart. I screamed until I had no voice left, until all the rage and grief and exhaustion had poured out of me. Then I wiped my eyes, checked my face in the mirror, and went inside to have dinner with my children. They couldn't know how close to the edge I was. They couldn't carry that weight. So I smiled and asked about their day and helped them with homework and tucked them into bed. And then I sat down and made a new budget, a ruthless budget that cut everything non-essential. No more streaming services, no more coffee shop treats, no more anything that wasn't absolute necessity. Every extra penny would go toward that credit card. I was going to pay this off if it killed me. Thursday, I went to work and picked up every available overtime shift for the next month. If I was going to dig myself out of this hole, I needed to maximize my income. My supervisor was happy to give me the hours. I'd always been reliable, never called in sick, never caused problems. She asked if everything was okay, noticing that I looked exhausted. I told her I was fine, just needed the money. She didn't push. Friday evening, a full week after the wedding disasters, I finally heard from Jenna again. But this time, it wasn't a text. She showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and looked through the peephole, seeing her standing there in jeans and a hoodie, her eyes red and swollen from crying. For a moment, I considered not answering. But curiosity won. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Jenna?" She looked at me with what might have been genuine anguish. "Can we talk? Please, I need to talk to you. You have 5 minutes. Say what you need to say." "Addie, everything is falling apart. Marcus and I are separated. He did cheat on me with Brittany. He admitted it. We're probably getting divorced before we even really got married. Mom and Rick broke up. Rick moved out. Megan is barely speaking to anyone. And Mom is a mess. She's drinking every night, crying, saying she doesn't know what happened to our family. And it's all because of you. Because of me!" I felt my anger rising. "Jenna, I didn't cheat on you. I didn't slap Rick. I didn't make Mom an alcoholic. I didn't do any of those things. What I did was stop letting all of you use me as a bank account. But you canceled my wedding. You humiliated me. Everyone knows what you did. I canceled a wedding I was paying for that I wasn't invited to. A wedding that you all promised to contribute to but never did. I have $17,000 in debt from your wedding, Jenna. $17,000 that I don't have for a party I wasn't welcome at. How is that my fault?" She started crying harder. "But we're family. Family helps each other. You were supposed to help me." "I did help you. For 14 years, I helped all of you. I co-signed loans I never should have touched. I paid your bills. I funded your lives while my kids went without. I gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. And the one time I said no, the one time I set a boundary, you all turned on me. So, no, Jenna. I'm not the villain here. You want to know what happened to your family. You all destroyed it by treating me like an ATM instead of a person. So that's it. You're just going to abandon us after everything we've been through together. Everything we've been through, Jenna, we've been through me, sacrificing everything for you. That's what we've been through. And I'm not abandoning you. I'm just no longer available to be exploited. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on equal terms, with respect, with boundaries, with actual reciprocity. But I'm done being the family piggy bank." She stood there, tears streaming down her face, and for a second I thought maybe she'd get it. Maybe she'd finally understand. But then she said, "You're so selfish. You've always been selfish. You think you're better than us because you have a job and pay your bills. But you're just cold and heartless." And that's when I was done. Completely, utterly done. "Get out, Jenna. Get out of my home. You're not welcome here." "Fine. I don't want to be here anyway. I hope you're happy alone." She stormed off, and I closed the door behind her, locking it. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I didn't cry. I didn't chase after her. I didn't apologize. I just stood there breathing, knowing I'd done the right thing, even though it hurt. Saturday morning 1 week exactly after Carla and Denise's beautiful wedding and Jenna's disaster, I woke up to an email. It was from Carla with the subject line, "Thank you." I opened it to find a long, heartfelt message about how their wedding had been the most perfect day, how they were so grateful to me for making it possible, how they'd never forget what I did for them. Attached were dozens of professional photos from the wedding. Me standing in the back during the ceremony, me laughing at a joke during the reception, me smiling genuinely for the first time in months. I looked at those photos and barely recognized myself. That woman in the pictures looked free, lighter, like she'd put down a burden she'd been carrying for far too long. I saved every photo and then responded to Carla's email telling her how happy I was for them, how they deserved every moment of joy. Then I looked at my calendar. It was October. Emma's birthday was in 3 weeks. For the first time in years, I was going to be able to afford to give her a real party. Not something extravagant, just a small party with her friends at the local pizza place. The same kind of party I'd been promised as a kid and never got. I was going to break that cycle. My kids were going to know that their mother loved them enough to prioritize them over toxic family obligations. I went back inside where my kids were still sleeping soundly, their soft breathing the only sound in the apartment. That sound, that simple sound of my children sleeping safely in a home I provided, was worth more than any amount of my family's approval. I had chosen myself. I had chosen my children. I had chosen freedom over obligation, boundaries over guilt, self-respect over family drama, and I was never ever going back. Here's what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will be the ones who take advantage of you the most. Sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who see your kindness as weakness. Love without respect is just control wearing a disguise. Walking away isn't revenge. Walking away is liberation. Peace doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from allowing it to shatter completely and building something new from the pieces. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you realized you were being used by people you loved? Have you ever had to make the hard choice to cut off toxic family members? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you were the family ATM or the emotional punching bag, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone, and your story matters too. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to finally put yourself first.